So welcome to Bunny's Designs. This is a live paint along, my first paint along. So I've got a bucket of water. I've mixed a little bit of raw umber with some fast drying medium and also some stand oil, but they are water mixable, Winsor & Newton water mixable mixes. So yes, that's the one. So there's, sorry about the light, I'll be messing about. So it's Winsor & Newton Artisan Water Mixable Stand Oil, and that means you can use it with the water mixable oils. So they're exactly like oil paints, except for there's a chemical added to them so that you can wash your brushes out with soapy water, and you have a special mix water mix. That's water mixable medium. You can have like a distilled mixable water with it. You can use a damp brush and a tiny amount of ordinary water, but in order for you to use it professionally, you do need the distilled liquid, diluting liquid, I think it's called. I have I have a bottle of it, and I can't find it. I can't find mine. So I've made this mix, and it's a little bit like thick cream. It's not quite pouring cream. Now what I could do, because it's not too bad though. It's probably like thick, like double cream rather than like single cream. It's probably like double cream. It won't drop off. So I just actually put a little bit of water to it. So I've just dunked once with the brush in the water. Sorry, I'm going to have to learn to do it right-handed. And you see that's now the consistency of double cream, and this is just that bit thicker. So that's probably what you want. But one brush full of water in there is not going to hurt, and that's quite amazing. And there's not a lot of smell. There's no oil smell. There's no terp smell. It does smell like oil paints, so there's a tiny bit of a smell to them. So what we normally do is we measure. So but I'm going to try and get in a position where I don't want to move, because if I'm in this position and then I look at it at that position, every angle changes. So if you want to do this and make a decent job, you've got to try and get comfortable, be completely square on to your work, and then be able to just look sideways and not move your head, because if you're moving your head, you're moving your angle. So your head wants to be still, you want to be looking in front of you. You've got to be comfortable with your arms, and then you can look sideways and see what you're drawing. And that means that once you've got this angle here, it's not going to change because you've moved your head. So if I do this with the camera, you might be able to see what I mean. The angles change. So I hope that's in focus. So you have it. If you want to focus on the books, let me know. But I didn't know if you wanted to see me sketching it out. Or I rephrase that, attempting. So because I'm a clumsy girl, I'm going to move my water onto my desk because I don't need it, only for rinsing the brushes out. I've got a piece of kitchen paper, and if I need it, handy. And I've just touched the canvas. Luckily we're having a dark background. So here we go. So what I might do is measure with this hand and then across, because what happens is, I'm trying to do it on I'm looking through the camera at the laptop. So if you want to measure this one, you've got to have your hand directly straight, your elbows has to be straight, and this can't be kind of wishy-washy. It's got to be dead straight. And this is how you measure if you want to measure across. So if you have your elbow straight, your measurements will be the same. If you did this for this one and then you bent your elbow, it completely changes. So that's why you have to have your elbow out straight. So I might struggle with that one. But we're going to have a go. Where do we start? Where do we start? So I'm going to try and get that book at the bottom. So I'm looking down on this one. Now, you're probably about the same eye level. So I wanted to look up to this one and down to this one. And I think I've got that. Now again, when we come to the detail, I'll turn the lights out so we can see, and the light will adjust, so we can see the shadows and get those gorgeous shadows in. But just because we want to actually see what we're drawing, we need to get the composition right first. So the first one that's across, and I don't know if I want to do that. I might just, I've just done that now. I've changed that because I've got a highlight here. There's just a touch of a highlight there, so I've changed that very slightly. Because I wanted to be able to see down there. And although you can't see it at the minute, it's going to have some really nice shadows on it. It's got to be interesting. You're going to have maybe look at this for like 20 hours or something. Not this particular one, but if you were doing something that can take you months, years, it's got to be right and it's got to be interesting so it can take you a long time. So I don't envisage anybody coming around this area. They are banned. I've told the whole family they cannot walk around this area so that this is not going to move. Um, so if I do that, I don't know what size I want to do it actually. So this is very, very rough, and as I say, I don't really know. And I've realised that that's too low, so I want to put it up there. So I can just ignore that, or we can just take, in fact, I think it might work with a baby wipe. Let's try a baby wipe. I have a baby wipe. You see, you'd have to use an oily rag if that was pure oils. So I think I might have to just make a few marks. Now I say bear with me because I haven't done this. So I really want this one higher up. So what I could do, again, you've got to be comfortable. You have to be comfortable. And I might have a disaster because I've got oils on here now. So I'm just adjusting the legs on my easel, which is not a good thing to do when you've got your paints on it. So now that's a lot better because in just about 2 inches from the bottom of the canvas is the bottom and 2 inches of the top. So I can actually transfer that across now because it's just easier to do it that way. So this is all trial and error. This is all, and I just need to go back a smidgen so you can see that lovely curl on here. I like that curl. So is everybody okay? And so that's actually changed now. So instead of it being, normally you use a ruler because it's not got bubbles on it and it's straight. So really you should use a ruler. But a wooden paintbrush would be fine. I'll use a wooden paintbrush. So actually that's the length of that one. I don't normally do it like this, but I'm struggling at the moment, so and that's the length of that one. And it's about there. So that's the next one. So this one is kind of, and then if you measure, and again you see I'm not measuring like this, I'm measuring what I can see. And it'll be slightly out what I'm doing, and you always use your thumb, my hands. So I know that the angle changes about there. And it's not too much of a curl, but it is a bit of a curl up. And again, this is a really, really rough kind of, and we know that goes down there. And then we've kind of, and again, if you're not sure, if you start measuring, I am a little bit further down, so mine probably goes off the edge of the thing, which is a bad composition, but that's about right. That, so again, now that can come to there because it's way off there. And again, if you're not sure, you can use that for the angle. So it's not far off that. And then it kind of goes up and round. And then here, and again, it's not going to be perfect, it's just really a rough. And then you start to measure when you put your other one in. This is, I'm just doing really rough. And I was going to put a coat of something on this canvas, but as again, this is a real rough. I just wanted to have a practice of how I used to do it, because I can't really remember. So again, if I'd have done this, I'm changing it. Now you can do that. That's another good way of doing it. You can measure, and then you can actually use exact. I don't know if I did that. I probably did that. Let me just double check. Or did I stand there and do that? So there's two ways to do it. You can either, and there is another little thing I've got for measuring, but again, that's for another day probably. Let's just maybe in just that little bit. Again, this is not for and that comes out at a sharp angle, so you've got to remember that. So we've got that top curling over there. And again, this is a real rough. This is just me having a go from not painting in a long time. That's maybe a little bit long. And that one is a lot longer than this one, so this has got to come forward. And again, you can check you're not doing this, you're straight, but you are measuring the angle away. So you want to measure that angle there to this, and you know how far to come this way, so you know how long the angle is. And if you know how long the angle is, then you can turn, and you're not turning this way, you're turning that way to get that line there, and then that can be transferred across. Now you can do it by eye if you're very clever, but as I say, if you're not and you're not quite sure, so you realise that that one actually should be further up a bit. It should be here, because that one is just slightly off. It's not exactly straight. And then that wants to go back to meet that, but obviously this is fatter. This is squashed a bit. It's not quite like that, but all this goes to be slightly, because this is fatter than this. And again, you know that because if you measure again with a straight arm, it's just a bit out, so we know that that one wants to be about there, but we can readjust that. It's in there somewhere. This is just a rough. And again, we know these books kind of do this thing here because they're kind of extremely raggedy at the ends. And we know when this one does this and comes out here and ends up probably here because it's all. So I could have made that a bit bigger because these are going to be quite fiddly, but I'm sure it'll be fine. Hope the light's okay. And again, what you can do is, if you're not sure, you measure that book and you work out that it's one. So that book is about right because it's not double, so you've got to keep an eye on that. But again, this is just a bit of a kind of just giving it picking out things that are going to make it easier for you. So about there we have this other book, and again it's the angle, so you don't want to measure like that, you want to measure the fact, and that's in the way. I have to do it that way, that from the back it's about what am I doing now? Oh, is that all it is? Is that not more than that? It's very steep, is that angle though. So there's very little here. Get some more paint on there. And again, it's not exactly level, but it's not too far. And it comes from behind there. It kind of goes up a bit, and it needs to pass under this one to come out here. So there's very little of this. I think I keep moving my head. So in conjunction with that one, it's about halfway through the middle of that one. And it's not as thick as that one. We've got that curly page, and then that's going to go over there. So we have that lovely, oh wait a minute, this one now, sorry. So we've got that really nice curve there, and it's going to be on a slight angle. It's not dead flat, it's slight angle. I think I keep moving about a bit, so I'm going to put that there, I think. And then of course it comes to here. So the canvas has got quite a nice thing across. I'm just going to put another dollop of water in there. And there's something quite wonderful putting a dollop of water into an oil paint. it's just quite nice. Again, this is quite an old paintbrush, so it's getting a bit of... It's still oil paint though, so it will still ruin clothes and things, so be careful with it. It's just... so we've got that one there. So coming out of here is just a little bit of something there. And that one's just shy. And then they're at this angle here. And again, you've got to measure that, it's actually almost directly from there is that first one. And these are not very thick books, so again you need to keep an eye on what you're doing. So that sits over there, but again we can get away with that angle wise. Just slightly down. And of course once you've got one, and they're nearly under there, once you've got one, you've got your next one. Now these might be a bit thick, so because it's a big thick paintbrush. And that's the next one there. And that one's a bit shorter. It was to go there. And they are thinner books, so they are kind of that. So I'm making them probably need a smaller brush. Have a look for a smaller brush. I buy the cheap children's ones. They're a couple of pounds for. Oh, that actually says French on it. When I bought some When I bought some paintbrushes, again this is a beautiful one, this one. This is Artist Hog Hair, Winsor and Newton. This would be a nice one to use, but it's far too nice for that. Use that for my detail. As I say, there was a on eBay I bid for some. What's this one? This is a cheapy nasty one. So dunk it in water, and we can kind of trash it. It's fine. It's not going to go to a point. It's already trashed. So I can use that one. So they need to be just a little bit. That's why that corner didn't work as well, because they want to be a lot smaller than that. So we've got 1, 2. The third one is again, I think there. The best thing to do is probably measure all of them. That's about right. And we need 3, 4, 5, 6. So we know we need about 6 of those. So we can just get those in there. And we can measure that across to make sure that it's about right. It's not far out, not for a quick sketch. And then that's the last one. And the last one, as I say, and I think the angle's not so bad. And again, we want, oops, no, I might have to go back to that one, I think. Oops, cannot draw a straight line to save my life. There we go. So I'm just going to measure that one, which is again a bit difficult to get to. Oh, it's not bad. So this one's going to be a bit more difficult because it's going to come out to, it's almost underneath that one there. And it goes just to that corner and then it carries on. And then that comes round to, again, you've got to kind of just measure. Yeah, it's probably a sharp angle. Again, you can play about with the angles a bit later. What else do we need now? So there's, because I've moved it, I've made it a bit kind of, I don't really like it because I've got a funny angle there. So I don't want to move these, but I want to move this one. So I've got to be darn crafty now. Yeah, it's not enough. Hopefully that wasn't too bad. It's nearly there, but I didn't like that nasty corner there. So I moved it about a bit. And what that's done. And that is really tiny. That's a really tiny thing. Is only about that. It needs to be, and then of course measuring that. Yeah, it's very very short. Is that it is there then? No, it's there. It's got to be there, so that's got to be shorter then. It's got to be there because then that kind of comes to there. It's about here, and we get all that thing happening here. So I say it's just a rough. Everything will want finalising and tweaking again, no doubt. Just because there's no point being up here, getting down here and realising that you're miles out. So that's why a little bit of measuring sometimes is quite nice. And again, it's not that deep because most of that paper hangs over that first line. And then we have kind of another one under there, which and these are slightly different books, these. And I had intended on them all being neat and tidy, but they're not. So, have I got a reference? Sometimes you can find a reference. So that one sticks out to match that one, and then that one comes in, and it goes to there. Let me get a bit of that there. And let's get another little curl on there. So I love these books because they're kind of oldie worldy, and that's got a curl up and that'll go across there. I think the other brush probably was slightly better actually, but the books are actually going to be in the middle, so. And then we've got this one here, which kind of, we've got that curl there, which is here. And that's that curl, and then we come down that angle and go round the back. So that one's that one. And then this one kind of comes around the back a bit proud. And it's that one. And then we've got this one. And you know, if anybody thinks that painting, and then from the back of here we've got that kind of curly thing, which is probably not that big. Yeah, it's not that big, but it's big enough. There we go. And then we've got this kind of thing going like this with a curly thing on it. And again, you get carried away because it looks bigger, but it isn't. And then that one can come down. And that one kind of goes behind there. And then you've got that paper there. And again, we don't really want much of that in at the minute. Again, we've got that little curl, and that little curl is actually there. Can't get down there for that. That's about right. Again, everything will want a little bit of, and then you've got to just check that you've got actually the right angle. And then we might as well put the bottom book on again. So this one is, again, you might find a reference. So from that corner there, you can go straight here, and this book is on an angle like that. So it's a very steep angle is that one. And again, see if we've got a reference. Almost there. So that was actually quite a good guess. And then we kind of have this kind of going on. And from where I am, I can just about get that. And that angle's wrong, I think. Yeah, that angle's definitely wrong. Because the book it goes under there quite steep and comes out there. And then we've got this, but it just barely touches that. Yeah, it's a really, really steep. Steep angle is that. So there we have a pile of books. I'm not sure about putting that one on. Oh, that's the one I've just put on. So they've got to be sitting on something. Now I have a desk, but that desk wouldn't be there, would it? So unless I make this into another box, I could make this into a big book, but I don't want to do that. So basically the desk would be kind of, we can have a desk. Have a desk going down there. Make it interesting, maybe. And the thing is now you've got to, probably the desk wouldn't be, because it's level on, the desk would be further back. So the desk probably have to go up there, maybe. But we can make it very dark, so we don't have to do a lot of detail on the desk if we don't want to. Hi Kingo, welcome to Bunny's Designs. Anybody else popping by? So where did we get this one's said was about there, didn't we? So to measure that one. Yeah, it's about right. So that one's there. So that didn't come down quite as much as that, did it? There's a nice highlight on there. I think that was a little bit deeper than I've got it. Just a little bit deeper. So I think that's not too far out. Obviously it will change as we go along. So don't forget to wash your brush out either in your terps, and again, you know, this is what it's oil paint. It's just that you can wash your brush out with hot soapy water. Now this will damage if I don't. I'm just sitting it carefully. It's not wedged in water. It's just sitting into water, because I don't have my soap near. But definitely don't stand your brushes in water. Only your glue ones you can do that with, because your glue ones are trashed anyway. So have you got any questions? So that's taken about 35 minutes for that. Have a mouthful of cold tea. I don't know, what does it look like on the, is it completely miles out? It does need a fair bit of tweaking. I think this one's a bit out here. But bearing in mind my angle, actually I prefer that angle, but my angle's probably there. So the angles will be slightly out. They'll be longer than these, because my head is that far away from the camera. And I tried to do it behind me, but it was just not right. So can everybody see that okay? Does that look okay? Oh yes, I haven't had any breakfast. That's not a good sign, is it? And don't think about worrying about wasting the brown, all this paint down here, because it won't be wasted. So I've used this much, and I've still got all this, which was the original mix with the fast drying medium. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change to a bigger brush. Remember to put that back in the middle when you're pushing down on it. And mixing with a palette knife is so much better. You get a better mix. You've got to be careful you don't go through your greaseproof paper though, but you get a better mix. So there is a bit of water in there as well. You don't want too much of these mediums, because if you have too much, it'll literally run off your canvas. So I'm going to use, so this was a set that I bought. I think I did buy this set when I was at uni. Most of the other brushes are cheap and cheerful. And if I'd have found my other brush last week, if I'd have found that set of this set, I would not, if I'd have known I had this set, I wouldn't have bought this set, because I don't normally spend £10 on brushes. I'm a tight Yorkshire lass. But this is a set that I bought from uni, and they're quite nice. And I bought these for uni, and I think these are a couple of quid. So for goodness sake, don't buy expensive ones for playing. So I'm actually going to use, I think I'm going to use one of these. Hubby washed them out earlier. So I've got some bigger palette knives, but I've got these brushes here. And these are Langnickel. Now they were a bit more than I normally pay, but you can get them at the works. But I think I might use this size. I think that's probably going to be a good size. You could use whichever size you want. Maybe the medium size would be good. All I'm doing is putting a dark down. Don't think I've got enough there, but I'm going to just start. So I'm dipping into water. All I want to do is to get a thin coat down, and it's always good. I mean, this is really watery. I'm going to make it a bit thicker actually, because if it's too watery, the colour, the oil paint will split. But what I thought I would do is, you can see, I've got to be a bit careful. You see it's splitting. So it is splitting, so I've got to be very careful. If you can see, you see it's splitting, and that's because I've got too much water. It's an oil paint. Now, I'm not really bothered because it's a practice, but you really want the distilled mixable stuff. It's my fault. I can't find it. I had it 2 days ago when I did the video. I cleaned up and now I can't find it at all. So I just wanted to get a bit of a dark around. Now it doesn't matter because it's going to dry and I can mix it in. Oh, this is just a bit. And I've got to be careful I don't splash on my nice books. This is why being ambidextrous comes in, because I learnt to paint with my right hand when I was at uni because I broke my elbow, my left elbow, about 3 weeks before a final. That wasn't good. It was only a first year final or a second year final, but it wasn't the best, I have to say. It wasn't the best. Oopsie. So if you're outside or if you're in a studio, you can splash about. If you put newspaper down, you can splash about, but I'm in my dining room, so I've got to be a bit careful. So it doesn't matter what the background's like, I just want to get some dark. I'm mixing the oil paint on it is actually the lid of my Stay Wet palette, but I'm using my kitchen roll and my we call it greaseproof paper, but I think you call it baking parchment. It's what you'd line a cake tin with before we had all the cake tin liners. So I'm going to put some more out because again, I'm a tight Yorkshire lass, and I don't like to waste. But that means I can actually tear this away and leave the damp if this gets too messy or I run out of space. So I've been putting a dollop of fast drying medium, and this is a practice. I can't remember what I did. This might not be right. So I'm mixing that together, and you need a good mix together before you put water to it. When we come to the fine detail, I will find the correct stuff, but some people like to put this kind of background down first and then you can work light to dark, but as I say, this is a very, very rough practice. I haven't done this for many years, so if I make a mistake, the idea is to make mistakes today on really cheap canvas. And I'm going to put just a touch of water to that. So you can try to keep the palette knife flat, otherwise you'll go through. Now obviously you do this for oils and you do this for acrylics. Perfect for acrylics, keeps your acrylics for a few days. If you have a sealable lid, maybe a couple of weeks. I don't think that's kind of watered down enough for me, so I'm going to dip into the water a bit more and hope that it just doesn't split. Because it's oil paint, it's pure oil paint and pure pigment, but what they've done, oh, I've got rid of that last book as well, let's see. What they've done is they've added a chemical which has allowed the oil paint to mix with water, but it is technically. So if that's those two books and that's that book, I've lost my bottom book. No, that's my bottom book. That's my bottom book, I think. So I'll just finish this and then I'll stop and read chat for a second. So really, to get it even more watery, you need but as again, I'm just slapping this on, but I want it to be fairly thin because you always work thin to thick. That's dried. That's just tacky. That's how quick it is. So it's fantastic. And you can do the liquid. I don't think the liquid stuff for oils is the same. But if you want to do oil painting and you don't want to mess about waiting days and days and days, then water mixables are fantastic. And I'm quite pleased with this canvas actually. It's better than I thought it would be. Normally cheap canvases aren't good, but we've got some nice kind of movement going. Oh, sorry, Kingo. Yeah, it's thingy paper. Now you do feel sticky because it is it's an oil. Oops, I hope that's my husband. I haven't had my I love you message today. Um, so I always get worried when I don't get that because that was one of the first signs of his stroke. We didn't have many others, but that was one of them that I thought was a bit weird. Oh no. Just bear me 2 seconds. Why do you always get a frantic email from your daughter when you're in the middle of something? And I never thought that my girls, they're wonderful, and they're not very demanding, and they were fantastic as little girls, but they go to university and suddenly they know absolutely everything. And everything you do is wrong, and you think, hang on a minute, hang on a minute. And since when's going to university for 6 months suddenly make you an absolute expert? Right, I need some more. I need some more. Tight Yorkshire last didn't put enough out, but I want a really thin coat. I'll show you just how thin it is. I did find one of these on eBay actually, but there were 20 things, but they had more colours in. They had just one or two more colours in. So I'm mixing um, the water mixable rapid drying medium and stand oil. So if you're using, you can do exactly the same amount of tube thing. Apart from you can't actually use water, but you will dip into your odorless spirits. Do not start using terps. We're all a lot wiser than we used to be using terps. Mineral odorless spirit will do in your oils where I'm using water. Acrylic, exactly the same. I think you don't need a fast drying medium for acrylic. But I think you've got something that makes it a bit slacker. But you can get this consistency with water. So that's quite a nice consistency. I'd probably do it a little bit looser than that. In fact, I don't really want to put a lot more. And I mean, bearing this is a rough background, as I say, some people put the backgrounds on. There's another thing that I use, and I can't actually remember what it is. When I did my degree, oops, and I'm doing that with a paintbrush now. I said I wasn't going to do that. So, right. But you've got to mix this thoroughly. I normally mix these two together and then I mix them in, but I wonder if you can see, oopsie, that you, and as long as you keep your palette knife flat, you're not going to go through your greaseproof paper or your brown. It actually is a bit brown. I think there's another one that I've got that's cleaner. So that's a really nice mix now. I would use it a bit thinner than that, but of course if you just put a touch of water to that, and I mean just a touch, it's going to make it a bit slacker. And then you want it's a very, very thin coat. And what two things, it's getting rid of the white, which is always a good thing. So then you have a medium tone. Now I've got a dark tone, but some people do it in yellow ochre. See, it's splitting a bit. I put too much water in it. I didn't really want such a thick. I wanted a really thin kind of. I can't find my distilled stuff. I don't know what I've done with it. Now I could use this. I think I can use oil stuff with it, but I don't really want to. So we'll plod on. But again, this is just a practice. I will use the distilled stuff. I think that's probably what I used. And that what that does is it's like water, but if you were using acrylics, it would be the equivalent to water. So it just makes it just not quite as thick. But I'm trying to just put a background on here. So I'm just dipping the brush into water. So it will take a tiny bit of water, but normally just enough as a damp brush. Oh, Alfie, where's he going? Where's the Alf Master going? But that should make, because you really want a very thin coat on your first one. If it was an original, it would be terps. It would be half terps and half water. This colour would be half this. It's just this is a very dark brown, because I said I wasn't going to use yellow ochre. So I'm using a limited palette is what I'm trying to say. So I'm going to go in here a bit because I want just I've got a rough idea, and I just want this to dry. And if you put thick on your next coat, one is it'll take too long to dry, and the other one is it's you want thin over thin until you get where you want more detail. Then you can put thick over thin, but never put thin over thick, or never put thick first, because it won't dry. And I wonder if I can just get in there. So this is negative space, and that's always quite interesting, is negative space. Some artists only kind of play in negative space. I've got to be a bit careful because I'm going to lose all those nice spaces that I've got, and I've actually lost the bottom one. But so I'm going to try and give it one complete coat, because what that does is this is going to be the first layer that is going to stick the entire thing on. And again, that's why if you make this layer too runny or too wrong consistency, the whole painting will literally run off your canvas. I've known people come in the next day after a weekend at college and there is nothing left. It's so, you've got to be a bit careful. But if you use thin coats, you should be fine. So I've got rid of all that nasty. And again, I'm not going to go around the edges. I'm not going to finish it properly. This is a practice. So again, I'm going to put this, it's technically got oil paint in it, but I'm going to put it to sit in my water pot. So I've got my other two sitting with that, like you would acrylics. You can never leave acrylics out like this. You leave them like that until you get to clean them. And then when you get to clean them, you can then store them away, but never ever leave your acrylic brushes or your oil brushes out. Well, oil brushes actually, if you're using oil, it's perfectly right, but not when you're using this. So I'm actually using a baby wipe, so that's quite nice. So we've got, again, I use my finger and all sorts. I don't want any drips. I want it to be completely flat. And this is as I say, just a very base coat. So normally what I would have done is done that first, but I decided that I was having so many disasters today. Oops. And remember, this is oil, so you do feel a bit tacky. So that's going to dry, and again, that's almost dry, is that? And it's not particularly warm in here, and luckily I've made just enough, so I've not wasted anything. So I can do two things. In fact, I can actually just rub that down there, because I'm not going to waste that either, because I'm a tight Yorkshire lass. And you can actually use your palette knife. I'm just a tight Yorkshire lass. I just have to make sure that I don't leave any bits. It's got to be fairly even, because it won't dry if it's not fairly even. So I'm going to put the palette knife in there, and I'm going to just clean that brush there as well. And again, I'm using baby wipes, but it's oil paint, so don't expect it to suddenly disappear. The only difference is it has a chemical with it that is allowing a tiny amount of water to be mixed with it, which is why you clean your brushes with soap and water. So what I could do with this, if I'm not happy, is I can just tear this off. And I don't actually need it again yet, do I? Oh, maybe I don't need to, but what you could do is just get rid of this. You could get rid of this, and it's gone through a bit, look. It's gone through, but it doesn't matter. It's still damp, that. It's still damp. We don't need to waste it. I think I might leave that, because it's only going to be brown. It's not going to do anything. I'm not going to use those two brushes either. Could have used that one. I've lost a book. I think I've lost a book. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I've lost my book. So the other thing I could possibly do is this. So where did we get to? Because once you lose things, I get confused. So I've got this one here. And then I've got, and this will be fine. So I think I said that was straight from that one. But it doesn't want to be that angle, does it? No. And again, I might not put this one in, but I just thought I would. So just go there then. So it is there. Gotta be a bit careful if you're doing that, otherwise you go straight through. But no, that's roughly there. I might leave it on that one. Just decide about that. But just popped it back in again, so I've lost it. So that looks slightly wet, but it's dried here, and you can see it's a bit thicker there. But that should dry in a little while. I might get the heat gun. I don't know what heat gun does to it. But the other thing I was going to do is next is spend half an hour mixing colours. So that's a very rough, but still quite measured, but obviously just a rough outline of trying to do a composition. And actually it's right in the middle. So I like my other ones when they were going off. So it might be very boring. But today's lesson, or this particular paint along, is practicing drawing, practicing looking, practicing playing with paint, oil paint especially, and practicing fine detail. So it doesn't really matter the fact that it's not the perfect composition. It's very difficult to get a really good composition the first time. So I'm going to end this first part of this recording, and then I shall be back in a few minutes with part 2. So thank you for watching.